welcome you to this final edition of D2 Tuesday for the month of February. Victor Anderson hollering at you in a positive tone, not hollering like I was on Monday if you're following me on social media. I'm in a much better place today, thank goodness. Coming up on today's episode, we're going to look at the top 25 rankings that came out earlier this afternoon, the results of last week's action that set up our top 25 poll. I answer Eric's question about the marquee tournaments in Division 2, and I take a look at what a D2 analyst has projected for their two early Field of 8 in Longwood coming up in this May. Follow then the circle on your social media accounts. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel so you don't miss any editions of D2 Tuesday. Of course, subscribe to the Inner Circle podcast on your favorite podcasting platform. Ratings and reviewers 5 stars. Not much changing in terms of the top 25. The top 3 actually remained the same from last week. North Georgia taking care of business at number 1. Swept King in a non-conference doubleheader and took all 3 games from new Peach Belt member USC Beaufort. West Texas A&M took care of business, though let down from their weekend sweep versus Texas Tyler. They knocked off UT Permian Basin. Tampa is number 3. They pick up a pair of non-conference victories over Bridgeport as they were off in Sunshine State Conference play. Rogers State made the jump into the top 5 there at number 4. They had the week off before they resume action this week. Grand Valley State stayed put at number 5. Texas Tyler knocking again on the door of the top 5. They jump up to number 6. Grand Valley State went 4-1 at the Lewis Dome tournament, while Texas Tyler took care of business in the Lone Star Conference, going 5-1 in league play, including sweeping Angelo State, who took a tumble in the polls. Cal State San Marcos fell to number 7, lost a tightly played series versus Sonoma State. If you heard my interview with Coach Steph Ewing during our preview show, she mentioned that Sonoma State was one of the schools that her Cougars would have to battle in the CCAA, and it turned out to come to fruition. You have Indy, number 8, and then Colorado Christian. We talked about them last week. They jump up to number 9, another conference sweep by the Cougars. They are now 16-1, winners of 10 straight after they sweep Fort Lewis, while West Alabama is now in the NFCA top 10 for the first time in program history. The Tigers are rolling as they took care of West Florida in Gulf South action. Mississippi College fell out of the top 10. They fell from number 6 to number 13. They took the biggest tumble of anybody in the week. Wilmington, Coach Shehorn and company, they fall a spot to number 11. They'll be starting their time in the Sunshine State this week versus Florida Southern. The Bronchos, Central Oklahoma, they're at number 12. Mississippi College, as we referenced, falling from seven spots to number 13. Wingate hosts Stady at 14. So does the Fighting Julie Lemaires and Nova Southeastern at number 15. Western Washington at 16. 14 through 21, there were no changes. The 14 through 21 from last week stayed the same this week, and that's in this order: Wingate, Nova Southeastern, Western Washington, East Stroudsburg, Pittsburgh State, Charleston, and St. Leo. Southern Arkansas at number 21. Northwest Nazarene moves up 2 spots to number 22. Angelo State falls a spot to number 23 after being swept by Texas Tyler. Concordia moves up to number 24. And Lenore-Rhine rounds out the top 25. Arkansas Tech is the top team receiving votes, followed by Alabama Huntsville, Texas A&M Kingsville, the Javelinas, Washburn, and Cal State Dominguez Hills. That is your NFCA top 25 and others receiving votes for this week. So how do we get to those rankings that I just pontificated about a few minutes ago? So let's start with West Alabama, who cracked the top 10 for the first time in program history, sweeping West Florida in their Gulf South Series in Livingston It was a wild affair. The Tigers scored 7 runs in every game. They outscored the Argos 36-19 in that 3-game series. The second game of the series, the first game of a doubleheader, was a wild affair with a combined 25 runs scored. West Alabama actually trailed 4-0 after the top of the second, scored 2 in the second, were behind 5-2 after the top of the third, tied it up in the third, then gave up a run to fall behind 6-5. They exploded for 4 in the fourth. West Florida bounced back, got 4 runs in the sixth to take the lead 11-9, and then the Tigers answered again with 5 runs in the sixth to take the win 14-11. And it shows you the resiliency and the fight that this Tiger team has under Coach Stephanie DeFeo, that West Florida scored in 5 of the 7 innings that they played against the Tigers. The Tigers scored in the next half inning in 4 of those 5 instances. And every inning they scored 2 in the second, 3 in the third, 4 in the fourth, and the aforementioned 6 in the fifth to take the second game of that series. And it was really a team effort for West Alabama. As you look at up and down the lineup, Kelsey Gillum started things off, 1 for 3 of a run scored. Taylor Clegg, 2 for 3, 2 runs scored, and an RBI. Anne-Marie Stanbridge, who had to come on in relief for West Alabama during the middle of the game to kind of settle things down. She went 1 for 2 with 2 walks. Marissa Mitchell, 2 for 3, 3 runs scored, 5 RBIs, including a home run. There were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 home runs hit in that game between West Florida and West Alabama in the second game of that 3-game series. Eleanor DeBlois picked up the victory, went 3 2/3, gave up 4 runs, 2 hits, 4 walks, 2 strikeouts to pick up the victory for West Alabama. And then they won the final game of the series in run rule fashion, 15-7 and 6. And it looked like it was going to be a mirror image in game number 1. West Florida jumped out to the early lead. The Tigers responded with both teams scored 3 runs each in the first inning. West Alabama took the lead 5-3. Then West Florida took the lead back 6-5. And again, West Alabama responding with 3 in the third. West Alabama scored, if you include the 6th inning where they scored 5 runs to beat West Florida 14-11, they scored in 7 consecutive innings and scored multiple runs in 6 of those 7 innings. The inning that put things in way was that 5th inning where West Alabama put up a 4 spot when West Florida was trying to get some momentum. It cut the lead down to 9-7 at the time. West Alabama got 4 in the 5th and got 2 in the 6th to put the run rule in effect and complete the sweep versus the Argos. And again, Marissa Mitchell, a phenomenal effort for her. 3 for 4, 6 RBIs, another home run. And you could understand how West Alabama has made this rise into the top 10. Their offense is absolutely lethal. One of the top offenses in Division II, led by Marissa Mitchell, who's hitting .442, 7 home runs, 25 RBIs. Oh, by the way, she's 6 of 8 in stolen bases this year. You got Taylor Clegg, 364, 2 home runs, 12 ribbies. Anne-Marie Stanbridge, 333, 3 home runs, 10 RBIs. As a team, they're hitting .279 with 19 home runs. And oh, by the way, they could do it on a base pass as well. They are 35 for 47 in stolen bases. Madison Wright, who picked up the victory in Game 2 of the Twin Bell, and Eleanor DeBlois, who we referenced, picking up the win in Game 1 of the doubleheader. They are combined 10-3 for the Tigers. And this is a West Alabama team, kind of how Mississippi College came on last year. West Alabama did the same last year. They played in a Gulf South tournament. They lost to Alabama Huntsville. Their last 3 games that they lost last season all were decided by 1 run. They lost a close game to Alabama Huntsville, in the Gulf South tournament, and then they had to travel to St. Leo. They lose 3-2 to Nova Southeastern and lose a 1-0 heartbreaker in the elimination game versus the Lions. So Coach DeFeo's team came back after a 41-win season last year, and they are a house of fire. 4 straight wins for the Tigers. They will find themselves in a showdown this weekend at Auburn Montgomery. Funny I should mention about the things going on with AUM, as they were able to take the series versus Mississippi College. The first 2 games of that series, when I saw those results, I'm like, whoa. And we had head coach Brooke O'Hare on our D2 Day edition of D2 Tuesday last week, and she's talking about, hey, we don't worry. We try to make sure we keep our team focused and executing the things at hand. And Auburn Montgomery jumped on the Choctaws early and often. They took the lead 1-0. Mississippi College tied it up, and then Auburn Montgomery exploded for 11 unanswered runs, 4 in the second, 5 in the third, 2 in the fourth, and it was more than enough for Elena Goebel, who picked up the victory. Fallon with a grand slam with that 4-run second. Morgan with the 2-run double. Baines with the 2-run triple. And then Wheat with an RBI double and scored on and advanced to third. Baines with the bunt single. And Auburn Montgomery, again, just like West Alabama, contributions from all 9 in the starting lineup. Everybody in that lineup either scored or produced a run, with the exception, reached base or scored a run, with the exception of the DP Molly Cobb. And what's amazing about Auburn Montgomery's performance, they had 7 extra base hits, 5 doubles, a triple, and a home run. And Goebel was strong. 4 hits, an unearned run, 3 walks, 9 strikeouts on 112 pitches to give Auburn Montgomery the first game of the series in run rule fashion, 12-1. And then it was so nice they did it twice. They win game 2 in 5 innings, 10-2, and just like game 1, jumped on the Choctaws early. Mississippi College tied it up at 2-all in the top of the third, but then here came AUM. 3 runs in the third, 3 runs in the fourth, 2 runs in the fifth, and that's how they got the 10-2 run rule victory. And once again, it was the middle of the order doing the damage. This time, Gia Martin with the 3-run home run in the 4th inning, and then the game ended on a Margaret Morgan 2-run single to right center to put AUM with the series victory. Avery Dickerson picked up the victory, 3 strikeouts in 5 innings, gave up 2 runs on 6 hits on 83 pitches. Mississippi College was able to salvage a game in the series. They won the Sunday matinee 3-0 to get themselves a game on the road. Brooklyn Cannon with a great performance with a complete game shutout, 5 hits, 3 walks, 6 strikeouts. And it was one of those games where Auburn Montgomery couldn't get that big hit like you saw them do. They couldn't get those big innings like we highlighted in the first 2 games of the series. And Samples, once again, doing the work for Mississippi College, got the ground out in the top of the first to get them on the board. And then Samples with the single in the 5th inning to give the Choctaws the insurance. Now, the top 3 hitters of the order for Mississippi College in Game 3, Lee, LaFosse, and Samples, went a combined 7 for 12. They scored all 3 runs, Lee did, and drove in all 3 runs. And they had 11 hits in that game. But a credit to Sydney Free. She pitched 6 innings, gave up 9 of those 11 hits of those 3 runs, but they weren't really able to, Mississippi College was, to get that crooked number like AUM did to get a big lead and put some separation between themselves and their foes. Now, AUM will have a doubleheader as of right now when you're listening to this versus Georgia Southwestern, and then that showdown versus West Alabama this weekend. That will be held in Montgomery, Alabama. And AUM, their schedule, they got West Alabama this weekend. They got a midweek on the road in Columbus versus Columbus State. And then they take on Shorter in Rome, Georgia for a 3-game set, March 8th and 9th. And then they have a host, number 1 North Georgia, in Montgomery, Alabama, on 2 weeks from this Tuesday, March the 12th. North Georgia was supposed to have a doubleheader Wednesday versus Alabama Huntsville. Mother Nature said, nah, you're not going to do that. So that doubleheader was postponed and will be taking place at a different date. A team that I want you to keep an eye on in the top 25 are the Golden Eagles of Charleston, led by head coach Michelle Frew. Of course, they made it to the Super Regionals last year, fell to East Stroudsburg on the road. And now Coach Michelle Frew has a bit of a homecoming starting tomorrow, as they'll be playing in Claremont as a part of the spring games. They'll take on the University of Mary and Findlay on Wednesday. Have the day off Thursday. They'll have Upper Iowa, Winona State on Friday, and they'll take on Ashland and Clarion on Saturday before they return home to Charleston, West Virginia to take on Millersville at the UC softball field for a doubleheader at 4 and 6 p.m. on next Wednesday. They got Tiffin, on a midweek doubleheader. That's going to be a very fun match to look forward to. And then they get into the bulk of conference play with West Virginia State, Wheeling, West Liberty. And that will set everything up for their conference tournament, the Mountain East tournament, which is going to be on May 3rd to the 5th at Salem, Virginia. And if you recall, last year, Charleston had to scratch and fight and claw their way from the losers bracket to get themselves into the Mountain East tournament. 45-12 on the season for a year ago. But the run for the Golden Eagles was absolutely remarkable given where they were in the Mountain East. And I want to remind everybody one more time of what exactly Michelle Frew's team had to do to get themselves in a position to, number one, make the tournament, then you host the regional, and then you go to super regionals. So they beat West Liberty in the opening game 5-0. They lose to Davis and Elkins. They had to win 3 games on Saturday. They beat Glenville State, Notre Dame College, and Fairmont State. Mother Nature was impacting that tournament held in Troutville. Then on Sunday, they had to run it back with Davis and Elkins and had to beat them twice. They dominated them, winning those 2 games by a combined score of 14-1 to win the Mountain East Championship. As a result, they get to host an Atlantic Regional. And then they found themselves in a similar situation. They lose the opening game to Kutztown. They beat Davis and Elkins for a 3rd straight game in elimination situations 4-0. They beat Kutztown again, and they beat Shippensburg twice 4-3 and 7-2 to get to the Super Regional hosted by East Stroudsburg. They win game 1. You heard our coach interview with East Stroudsburg head coach Jamie Wallback on a D2 season preview, how her team was in that situation a couple years ago before. They win game 1. They lose the final 2 games, 3-0 and 2-0 with Paige Zigmund and company, and they fall 1 game short of getting Coach Frew to that elusive national championship tournament. And you want to talk about a fun storyline. How cool would it be if Charleston can win that Atlantic region and Coach Michelle Frew, who had so many great teams around this college, a lot of them that I had the honor and privilege of calling during my time at Rollins. That 2011 team that went 45-2 in the regular season was as high as number 2 in the nation, hosted regionals for the first and only time in program history, and they go 2-Q at home in a wild regional. The 2012 team the next year, they go to Valdosta, Georgia. They end up losing the regional to the eventual national champion Blazers. 2013's team with Rollins gets screwed out of the tournament. The next year, they get to a regional final. They are 1 win away from making it to Super Regionals for the first time. They get knocked out in stunning fashion on the road by Alabama Huntsville. They lose 2 games to them. Then in 2016, the breakthrough in Valdosta, they go to Florence, Alabama. They lose to the eventual national champion UNA Lions with head coach Ashley Cozart. For Coach Michelle Frew to go through all of that, retire from Rollins, end up at Charleston, and to take this team back to the state where she made her name as a player and a coach, I'm going to be selfish here, ladies and gentlemen. I am hoping that happens. But they'll have to take care of business, and they'll do so in the spring games starting off on Wednesday for those of you who are listening to our humble podcast. Now, if you've been listening to our parent podcast, In the Circle, our Monday episode, first of all, thank you. You heard Eric Lopez ask me about the marquee tournaments in Division II. And I told him that was an easy answer. Because there are 3 tournaments that I consider the top tournaments in Division II. One of them is the Division II First Pitch Invitational. That's held at the Scrapyard Complex in Conroe, Texas. D2. You have Angelo State, Arkansas Tech, Rogers State, Pittsburgh State, Texas Tyler, Washburn, Wingate, among some of the teams in that field. A phenomenal field that they have. And of course, you have the Gulf Shores Invitational, which is a lot of which kind of serves as a Gulf South Sunshine State Conference field. They've had some marquee teams like West Texas A&M was in it one year. We talked with head coach Michael Mook about that last year when D2 Tuesday was kind of in its infancy stages, so to speak. So those are the 2 tournaments that I think of. Out west, Concordia has hosted a big-time tournament every year with a lot of teams in the West region. You have the Dome tournament that I referenced with Grand Valley State and how well that they performed up there. A lot of Midwestern teams go up there to the Lewis Dome tournament. And this year, there will be several teams that will be coming to Melbourne, Florida to compete in the USSSA Space Coast Games. Nova Southeastern will be among some of those teams there. Wilmington with Coach Shehorn, they'll be participating in a pair of games in Melbourne on Sunday. They've also hosted some Division II action in the past. But in terms of the marquee tournaments in Division II, those are the 2 that I think of. The D2 First Pitch Invitational in Texas, and you got the Gulf Shores Invitational in Alabama. Of course, I have to give some honorable mention to the Charger Chill Out that Coach Les Studeman and Alabama Huntsville hosts every year. They always have great competition to come to Rocket City to play up there. But in terms of Division II, those are the 3 tournaments that I kind of think of to kind of have the equivalent of our Division I counterparts, because they have marquee tournaments like the Shriners Children's Hospital Clearwater Invitational. You have the Mary Nutter tournament that takes place in Cathedral City. You have a lot of impactful tournaments, the NFCA Lead Up Classic, which, by the way, will be back in 2025 in Clearwater for you Division II fans. In case you were having any doubt, yes, we are going to be there if broadcasting conflicts don't get in the way. So, yes, we are going to be there for the D2 Lead-Off Classic in 2025. One other subject that I do want to bring up before we sign off on this D2 Tuesday, our previous guest, Wayne Cavadi from NCAA.com, put out about a week and a half ago. We didn't have a chance to kind of look at it in depth, but we're going to do so now. Is his way too early Final 8 team. So essentially, he has picked one team out of each region who he thinks that will make it to Longwood. And yes, Wayne, if you're listening, I will hold you to this when we bring you back on towards the start of the postseason. We'll analyze this as we get into conference play, and especially in April when those regional rankings start to come out, especially the first one that comes in alphabetical order. Make with that what you will. Okay, so in the Atlantic, he has Westchester. Now, the Atlantic Regional was East Stroudsburg and Charleston. We just highlighted Charleston last year. Now, Paige Zygmunt is back at East Stroudsburg, and she was phenomenal. Was the PSAC Pitcher of the Week for a phenomenal week she had last week. Now, let's remember, Westchester have made it to the Atlantic, who represented the Atlantic region in 3 straight trips to the finals, 2018, 2019, 2021. They have the top 5 hitters returning from last year, top 3 pitchers from a year ago. And Westchester got knocked out early in the PSAC tournament where East Stroudsburg, Shippensburg made those charges and set themselves up for positioning. So don't overlook Westchester. Now, the Central, he has Oklahoma Baptist. The Central is, I don't know how that's going to look, because the Central, I can make the argument, the Central, the South Central, and the South are probably the most top-heavy regions in Division II. Central Oklahoma's off to a slow start. Augustana, with Coach Mel's there, they're kind of finding their way through an early season. But don't count out Rogers State. Need to remind everybody, Rogers State won a national championship in 2022. So let's all keep that in mind. But I can understand why Wayne thinks about Oklahoma Baptist. Kaylee Jones, who went 31-7 last year with a .78 ERA and 315 strikeouts. Keep an eye out for Oklahoma Baptist. A little sleeper pick I like as well. Oklahoma Christian. Just keep that in mind for them. In the East, he's going with Wilmington. I can understand why he likes Wilmington. Wilmington last year broke through, beat Adelphi, made it to the national championship, the World Series for the first time in program history. He have a lot of returners back, and again, boosted by the confidence of their opening win versus in-state D1 foe, Delaware State. That will serve well for the Fighting Mike Shehorns in Wilmington. We'll see how they look after their trip to Florida, which starts on Wednesday. In the Midwest, he has Grand Valley State. Now, with the Midwest, you think is either going to be Grand Valley State or UIndy. Both of them, not surprisingly, this week, ranked to the top 10. Grand Valley State number 5, UIndy number 9. Keep an eye on Saginaw Valley State. That's all I'm going to say. But the team that's headed up by Coach Callahan, yes, we know the firepower that they lose, but they get Ashley Platek back. She's back in 2024. I think Grand Valley State, the road may go through them. They got off to a slow start. They opened their weekend that they played in Tennessee, but they kind of figured themselves out. Wayne likes St. Leo coming out of the South. Now, for full disclosure, I did broadcast for St. Leo for about a year and a half, and I'm never, ever going to doubt Eric Kimberger and what she's building over there with associate head coach Brittany Johnson. But you look at what she has to deal with in her conference alone. Nova Southeastern, Tampa, an emerging team coming up in Winter Park and Rollins, and of course Emory Riddle, who will be in the mix. And then you got the Gulf South Conference, where you got Mississippi College, West Alabama, Alabama Huntsville, and Valdosta State. And to think, ladies and gentlemen, one of those teams may not make the tournament. We'll talk about that down the road when regional rankings come out. The South Central, oh, goodness gracious. Let's see. You got Texas Tyler, West Texas A&M, West Texas A&M swept Texas Tyler last weekend, but Texas Tyler just beat Angelo State, swept them this weekend. And for West Texas A&M, they want to get back. They want to get back to that national landscape, but it's been Texas Tyler who, ever since they joined Division II, have been dominant. 144 wins since 2021, 62 of those wins last year. Now, again, the Lone Star Conference, you know is going to be brutal. Oklahoma Christian, I incorrectly put them in the Central region. They're in the South Central region. Look out for Oklahoma Christian. I think they could be the dark horse in that South Central region. The Southeast, well, North Georgia. North Georgia is looking to do something that has not been done since 1998, which is go back-to-back. That was done by Cal U. We all know what North Georgia does. They have a ton of firepower back, a lot of returners from last year with Sophie Mooney and Sydney Blair, a veteran lineup. And Mike Davenport has his team primed and ready to make that push to try and make their own history, and history, again, that has not been done in over 3 decades. And the West, Look, the West region is the toughest to figure out because the West region in the last 2 years has had a number 6 seed, which was Cal State San Marcos last year, and a 7 seed in Dominguez Hills the year before, both making to the D2 World Series. So, good luck for me trying to figure out how that's going to work. Wayne has Cal State San Marcos making it back with Savannah Coyle and Jaylene Sloss. But we will see, especially with the West region that, as I highlighted, if you're in the field, you have a good shot as anybody to make it this year to Longwood. So we will keep Wayne accountable throughout this season, especially when the regional rankings come out in mid to late April. So that's going to wrap it up for this edition of D2 Tuesday. Coming up on our next episode, we will recap some of the marquee series, especially that series with Auburn Montgomery and West Alabama. We're going to look at some of the matchups taking place in the spring games. They're going to be going on in Clearwater, including a big-time matchup between Minnesota State Mankato and Grand Valley State. And we're also going to highlight some of the national players of the week and some conference honorees. Before I go, I do want to give some recognition to some players who had some great weeks. In the South Atlantic Conference, Madison Wilson from the North Rhine had a .929 batting average with 12 runs scored to win their Player of the Week honors for the Bears. So that's someone to keep an eye on for there. Brooke Miller was a Peach Belt Conference Player of the Week, dominant performance versus Georgia Southwestern. Kenzie Smith from U of Indy won the Pitcher of the Week award for the GLVC, the 8th time she has taken home that award. And Elena Goebel was named the Warhawk of the Week after her 9 strikeout performance we talked about earlier in our show versus Mississippi College in that 12-1 run rule victory. So that's going to wrap it up for D2 Tuesday. Make sure you subscribe to our Inner Circle YouTube channel. Turn on those notifications so you don't miss any of our content that we have lined up for you. Make sure you listen to our parent podcast, Inner Circle, so that way you don't catch any of the action on the Division I side. And we may be making some announcements about some content that we're going to be having coming up down the pike. But that's going to wrap it up for this edition of D2 Tuesday. I'm Victor Anderson. Remember, folks, there are more of us than there are of them. We hope you enjoyed this edition of D2 Tuesday. Top Podcaster out. Good night, Canada.